to say too, Sue, is that what bothers me about society is that our stories, you with your alcoholic mother, me with my abusive dad and checked out mom, like these are sadly not unusual stories. These are not uncommon,
No.
right? And that's really tragic. And thankfully we're talking about these things so others know that there's hope and possibility and all of that. But think of how many people are still carrying that stuff inside of them that they may not even realize how much it's impacting them.
Right.
Right. To then start to
absolutely.
work on it. And it's just tragic to me that because, I'll tell, I've had a few therapists for the years and they'll just be like, oh, wow, that's really messed up. And I'm like, hey, I don't need you to tell me that. I know it's really messed up.
Can I have my money back? I
But
knew that.
the more I talk with people, the more I find out this wasn't that unusual.
Alrighty, it is time to stop hitting snooze and awaken to a life worth being, the fun and inspiring podcast that dives deep into what makes life truly fulfilling. I'm your host, Sue Willoughby, a self-proclaimed badass transformational life coach for women over 40. Join me as I explore the extraordinary journeys of ordinary people who've transformed their lives from the inside out. Tune in weekly to uncover the secrets to smashing through your perceived limits and creating a life that's not just well lived, but totally worth being. Welcome back to A Life Worth Being. And today's guest is the unapologetically bold Jen Vertanen. She's a speaker, a transformation empowerment coach, soon to be author, podcast host, and chief disruptor at Be Dare Create. Jen is a fierce guide for restless women who are done with checking the boxes and ready to start living their best damn lives. Through deep identity work and no BS action, she helps women stop waiting, own who they really are, and build a life that in their 80s or as their 80-year-old selves, they will be toasting with a dirty martini and zero regrets.
That sounds about right.
What's that?
That sounds about right.
Yeah, that's about right? Yeah, dirty martini and zero regrets. I got you. So no fluff, just power, permission, and unstoppable momentum. Let's kick some butt today, Jen. What do you say?
Let's do it. I'm here for all of it.
Drop some F-bombs or whatever we're going to do. I don't know. Oh my God. Well, I am so excited to have you on the show. We got connected through a prior guest that I had on the show, Lisa Kirkman. And so I saw you you had commented on the episode and I was like, I need to have that person on the show. So here we are. We're doing it. Yeah.
I feel like I kind of come with a vibe of like, what you're getting into, which is like, you can choose to opt in or opt out, right? And we chose to opt in to each other and others opt out, at least for me.
Exactly. That's why I say I'm
good with
not
that.
Everybody's coach, right?
No. I'm in my repel era. I'm not being an asshole, but I'm like, I'm not spending time and energy on trying to please people and make them like me. It's just, I don't do that anymore.
Exactly. I think we reach a certain age when we're just like, we have no more fucks to give. And we're like, who cares? It's okay. Not that we don't care. We do care, but we just don't.
Yeah. I just don't have as much energy as I did in
my filter has gone away too as I get older. And not that I really had one to begin with, but anyway.
Yeah.
Oh my
the older
God.
I get, the swearier I get. And like,
swearier, is that a word?
We're making it a word. Like, there are no rules, Sue. There are no rules.
I love that.
So,
I love that. Well, speaking of no rules, you've got quite the intro there, but you have a bunch of stuff. I want to know all about everything. Tell me a little bit how, a little bit of your background, how you got into empowerment coaching, and I want to know what Be Dare Create is. So let's start there.
Well, I would too. No, no, it's, my background is all about, I had to go through some really deep identity work to go from self-loathing, in decades of it, but started doing that work in my mid 40s in 2015 to loving the hell out of myself and my life. And did it take me a better part of the decade? Yes, it did. But as I like to tell people, I get to now have this the rest of my life. But that's the B piece, right? It's, I spent decades on autopilot. I checked all the boxes. I did all the things. I mean, other than getting pregnant at 19 and going through divorce and I had a pretty conventional standard path and I was so fucking miserable on the inside and no one would have guessed. The only one who got to see it was my husband, and it was heartbreaking because he couldn't fix it for me, right?
Yeah.
Um and so that who are you choosing to be? Like really, truly, not just the surface level, not even a couple layers deep, but who are you deep down inside in your bones? How do you bring more of that person to the table? I love talking about being unapologetic and no rules. Like I get to make up my rules. I get to give myself permission to do the things I want to do, right? No one else gets to do that for me. And then that dare is like, okay, now that you have that identity piece, what are you daring yourself to do? Right. I love being challenged. Like, tell me I can't do something and I'll be like, hold my beer, just watch me. Right.
All right.
So what are you daring yourself to do?
Yeah.
And then from that's the create, right? What life are you here to create? What impacts are you here to have? What legacy are you living today? Right. And I think the underlying message is that intentional piece, right? Um, Notice where you're on autopilot and do the work to get yourself off of it.
Why do you think people, women especially, because I'm assuming that you work more with women, yes?
Yes. I thought you were going to
Primarily?
say, I'm assuming you're a woman. Yes, yes, I am, Sue.
No,
I
no,
am a
no.
woman.
No, I'm assuming you work more with
Yeah,
women,
I
and
do.
I do think that women have that identity crisis
Hmm.
and that whole, like, why do you think that we don't challenge ourselves and that we don't ask those deep questions and that we do continue to check those boxes until we get to a point where we're like, "Now what?"
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it is absolutely the fuckery of society that, I'm Gen X. We were the generation that was told we could have it all, right? And we were killing ourselves ever since to quote unquote have it all without ever stepping back and saying, well, what do I actually want though? Like,
Mm.
what does have it all mean to me? But
Right?
then if we go back, like that's actually your nervous system and your brain keeping you safe. Your brain is not wired for adventure and adrenaline. And, it's wired to, help you get around the tigers, right? That are lurking in the bushes. And it can't distinguish between an actual real life tiger or I'm doing something that's outside my comfort zone, but I really, really want it. Right. And so, and we're not taught how to A, that's going on, and then B, what to do with it, right? So that you feel safe in your nervous system to do the thing you really want to do, even if it feels like the tiger lurking around the corner.
Yeah, it's like, is it imminent danger? Is it
Yeah,
actual danger? Or is it just something that my monkey brain has made up to scare the shit out of me, you
exactly.
know?
And I go back to we're not taught how to recognize that this is what's happening within ourselves. We're not taught emotional wellness. We're not. And I think we do such a disservice um, to all generations that we don't teach that.
I just put it in a box,
Yeah,
pack
just
it away neatly.
pick it. Yeah, yeah.
We
Don't
don't
rock
need
the
to hear
boat.
about
Just
that, you know?
yeah,
If we
people
don't
don't
talk
want to
about it, it
know.
doesn't exist,
Yeah.
right?
I so love that we're having conversations around mental health and neurodiversity. These are both things that I experience myself where, menopause, I didn't know that itchy ears was a symptom of menopause until I read it on threads. And all of a sudden, a bunch of women were like, oh my gosh, I have itchy ears too. And I thought I was just going, I mean, it was awful.
That's funny.
Like,
I don't think I
why don't
knew
we
that
talk
either.
about those things?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm so glad you didn't experience that,
No
because
itchy
it was
ears here.
awful. Like,
That's weird.
so itchy. But it's an actual menopause thing that obviously not everyone gets, but
Yeah,
a lot do. And so it's like we're stumbling our way through these things that we've, you know, not been taught it's okay to talk about. And I'm kind of like, just fuck that. Like, if I can share my experiences and help others hear that me too and not feel alone, then yeah, I'll be the awkward go first. I have no problems doing that.
Yeah, I love that. I guess I'm awkward, go first too, do whatever, and I've always been that way, and like we
Hmm.
were talking before, we can have the mom conversation
Yeah.
too, but I mean, when you grow up with an alcoholic, you're kinda like, you never know what to expect,
Yeah.
so you're just like, "Okay, what's today gonna bring?" Or you
Yeah.
just don't know, right? Am I gonna get picked up from school? So
Mm,
if I do get picked up, am I gonna get home safely? Weird things like that, so not much. You're like, "Well, how much worse could it be?" Right?
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
already my comfort zone is non-existent or it's discomfort, so what difference does it
Hmm.
make? So,
Yeah.
but
I
yeah,
was
starting with a
I have my
question.
own mom stories, but my
Oh,
dad was severely mentally ill.
mm,
And you never knew moment to moment what would set him off into a scary, scary rage, right? And so, yeah, and it's death by a thousand paper cuts, right?
mhm,
Is you're always looking for like, what is that safety? How do I, what can I do to not prevent or to prevent a rage? You're always walking on eggshells, and
yes,
that's that CPTSD that people carry with them.
yeah,
Complex post-traumatic stress is you're always on the watch. No wonder we hold so much tension. Our nervous system literally doesn't feel safe because we were never safe when you're walking on eggshells.
right, yeah, you just don't know, and the same thing with
Mhm.
my mom. "Oh, okay, I guess I said the wrong thing."
Mhm.
Shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is true, and it's very same thing, right? It's unpredictable, you just don't
Mhm.
know, and I think that it definitely affected my level of or my ability to trust people
Mm,
because you never knew,
absolutely.
right? You just are like, "Okay, well, are you gonna hurt me, or are you gonna leave me, or are
Mhm.
you gonna"
Mhm.
Yeah, we can get into a whole therapy session here, but I don't know that we really wanna go down that rat hole.
Uh,
But yeah, and I know that you had an interesting relationship with your mom as
mhm.
well. Do you feel like talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I
Okay.
said, I'm an open book. Yeah, my what I like to say is there was always love. My mom has since passed, so I, I share. No, I'm not going to say it. She wasn't the best mom. I'll say that. Okay. But she had her own stuff that she had gone through. I talked about my dad being severely, severely mentally ill, and so my mom was very much a victim, like my brother and I were. And it wasn't, not to say that mentally ill people are problematic in and of themselves. It showed up in my dad in very abusive ways, right? But again, realizing that my mom was very much that victim, and so and she'd had a lot of stuff that had happened in her life, right? And now that she's passed, I'm able to have so much empathy for what she went through. But before then, it was the death by a thousand paper cuts. All the times she told me I wasn't a very good person, warning my husband that I wasn't a very good person. Why don't people like you? Why don't people choose? I mean, just all these things. And it was never about me, but you don't know that
Mhm.
when you're a preteen, a teenager, a young mother yourself. You don't know that,
Right,
right?
and you're super vulnerable,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
you just take everything to heart, and
Yeah. One of the
yeah.
stories, and it sounds relatively benign, but again, death by a thousand paper cuts, is that um, I was expected to be prom queen. This was my mother's expectation. I would be prom queen. So we bought the dress of the season. Not necessarily, I mean, I was like, "Sure, that's great," but my boyfriend was out of high school already. I really didn't care, but it mattered to her.
Mhm.
Not only was I not prom queen, I was not even chosen to be on court. And so she says to me, "Well, why did we buy the pretty dress?"
Ooh,
Like,
ouch.
oh, like the message I took from that, it stayed with me until my 40s.
Wow.
Yeah, and when I talked with her about it as an adult, she's like, "Well, that's not what I meant." But again, the words, you're in those formative years when
Right.
you haven't grown up feeling safe and loved and cherished and worth saving, like you take that shit to heart.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I didn't get a pretty prom dress. I didn't go to my
I mean,
I came out when I was 17, and it was kinda not a
yeah.
thing. You didn't take your girlfriend to prom back
Yeah, yeah,
then.
yeah.
It
Well,
was the
this was
'70s.
1987 and, the gunny sacks was all the rage and, the photos are kinda funny. But that was just one little example of those things that were said that you carry with. And, through the years, I was with my mom in her final weeks, a lot of time with her, and I got to know her more as a human being
Mm.
than as my mom. And I loved those moments. And I now wish I had more time with her to learn more about her as a human and not this kind of shitty mom.
Yeah, it's hard, like you said, to, when we're being confronted when we're young and we don't
Mhm.
know any better, and we just really need the support and the love and all that
Mhm.
stuff, and we're not receiving it, yet we're receiving these other weird messages,
Yeah.
and it's, like, misinformation and stuff, and it's difficult to I had a, challenging relationship with my mom till the day she
Mhm.
died, and, it was I wish we could have been closer, and then I was always torn. I'd go to visit her, and then I'd be like, I couldn't wait to get out of there,
Mm,
it was just,
mhm.
and then I'd feel guilty. It was like, oh my
Yeah.
God, what a horrible cycle. Like, I'm such
Yeah.
a bad person. And I'm like, here's the thing, I eventually realized that's not my shit. I don't have to take
Mhm.
it on.
Mhm.
I'm not responsible for what she went through or
Yeah.
anything else. I'm sorry. But here's the other thing too. Our parents, right? You and I'm sort of, the tail end of the boomers, right?
Mhm.
So we're a little bit
Yeah.
apart here. But the thing is, our parents were not from a generation where you talked about any of that stuff,
Mhm.
mental health, therapy, or any of that. That
Yeah.
just was like, oh no, I'm not doing that. I'm not talking about my anything that's going
Mhm.
on. So that
Yeah.
and that
Let
was
alone
a thing.
periods and,
Yeah. What's this
menopause
thing?
and
Yeah. Right. Yeah, all of that stuff. They just didn't talk about it. And it
Mhm.
just so now everything is out in the open, which is great.
Yeah.
The kids these days, I'll
Yeah.
say, uh, they're exposed to a lot more, but their parents or their generation, of the parents are more open and
Mhm.
talking about
Mhm.
things and all of that. So we have come a long way.
Yeah, yeah. My youngest is
We had to
turning
do that on
21.
our own, though. I mean, when we
Yeah.
got to a certain point, we're like, "Why am I so fucked up? God."
Why am I so fucked up? Well, you know, 2015 was my very pivotal year, and it was the year I turned 45, and I had that, "Why am I so fucked up? What do I
Right.
even do?" Yeah. But no, it's I shared with you, my mom is very much my muse because of what she was able to do in spite of her life, and
Mhm.
that she never gave up hope and finding true love and finding her people, and she never gave up hope, and she finally found it in her late 60s, and then she passed away at 73, so she didn't have it for very long. um but I also, it's just such a good reminder to not give up hope, to not that what you want is out there, and it might be really, really, really hard to get it, but if it truly is worth it to you, it's worth it to do the work.
Yeah, absolutely. And the work is not easy. I mean,
No.
have been on my journey for a long time. I mean, like I said, I grew up just kind of being in self-protection mode and
Yeah.
I took care of myself.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
so I just was always in kind of survival mode and I was just angry and bitter
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
jealous of, other, and I'm like, now I just, like you said, I don't give a fuck.
So
But
jealous of
but
strong family units.
yeah, yeah,
Ah.
and not even that, which but yes, it was that and just everything. I was just kinda angry,
Mhm.
and, I too drank a fair bit. I
Mhm.
drank a lot, what am I talking about? I was a partier because it was like, "Okay, this is how I'm
Like,
gonna make friends is,
mhm.
I work at bars and I hang," and all that stuff. So you start I'm like, "Oh, guess what I'm turning into, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then I quit drinking over 3 years ago
Oh,
now.
good for
It'll be
you.
4 years in November, and I don't miss it. It was just
Yeah.
kinda like, "Okay, this is no longer serving me,"
Mm, mhm.
and I
Just
quit. I just quit, and it was but I feel so good. But the
yeah.
thing is, I had done a ton of work up to that
Mhm.
point,
Yeah.
and it's like, "Okay, let's just peel back the layers," and, but
Yeah,
it's
just
not
keep
an
going
easy
at it.
process. It's not a pretty process either.
It's not, and I actually like, I'm pretty clear in warning people from undertaking the work. Um, because
Do you have a specific process that you take people through, or do you, how do you work with your clients?
yeah, so we first there is a process, but it's also loosely structured for what the person needs, right? And so it does start with like, well, what is that vision? And I actually go to talk about being bitter and resentful. Before I did my work, like it would keep me up at night. This thought that I'm going to be an 80-year-old bitter, resentful woman. My kids aren't going to want to come visit me, and then I die, and so my kids are obligated to come to my memorial, but they're the only ones that come, right? And then they're
That's a
embarrassed
depressing thought.
because
That's sad.
yes, yes.
Yeah,
But also, this was the life I was creating for myself, right? And so I turned it to, well, who do I want to be at 80? That was my vision. Who do I want to be? And I've been working backwards ever since to become the essence of her today,
nice.
right? And so that's where I have people start is like, great what you want to do in your business, great what you want to do 3 years from now. I don't care who's that person at the end of your days. How do we bring more of that here? Because when you have that, whatever that is, things become clearer, actions become clearer, you know, who you want to be becomes clearer. And so we start with that vision, we work backwards, and then we get into like, okay, what does that mean in the here and now? And how do we start creating and designing your life and business around?
Yeah. Yeah, you can't just dive into your business or something else until you build a foundation, and that
Yeah.
foundation, usually you have to tear down the house and dig a
Yeah.
big hole and pour the concrete fresh
Yeah.
and all that stuff, and, like I was saying to somebody else on a podcast, I'm like, people like to skip right to the it's all good to have the dreaming and stuff, but you
Yeah.
can't implement anything without figuring out
That
what you're starting with.
yeah. And I guess that's what I knew I didn't have a solid foundation within myself, but I didn't realize how much that was holding me back, impacting me, all of that until I had the crumbles of the foundation that I even had were taken away from me in
Mm.
2015. And it was like, oh, well, I don't even have that anymore. So we're going to rebuild from the inside out. And and that's why, like I said, like I do it cheekily, but it's like if you don't have support in your life, like this is not easy work. It may
Right.
not be the right time for you to do it, right? If you're working with me, I'm going to make sure you're really, really, really ready for the deep emotional stuff that we're going to go through. I'm
Mhm.
right there by your side. Like, no one is other than yourself. Like, I will believe in you enough for the both of us to get you through those times, but it will be hard.
Yeah. And how do people respond, like, when you tell them that?
So I think they know me enough to know that it's coming from this place of I only want the best for you. And it's coming with so much love and grace and compassion and making sure that you're in a place where you can give yourself that grace and compassion as you go through these. I just had coffee with a new friend last week and we were talking about it, and she wants to be doing the identity level work. Like she recognizes she needs to do it. And I'm like, yeah, it's about 10 years for me. And she was like, what? And I'm like, yeah, 10 years. And
Oh, it's not just a weekend retreat?
she's like, I thought you were going to say 6 months. And I was like, ooh, no. But I always bring it to that positive place of like, I get to have this the rest of my life. I hope I have at least 4 more decades in me. I just turned 55 this week as of this recording. I want 4 or 5 years or decades, right? I get to have this. I don't care how long that took. I get to have it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't, no one can take that away from me.
Yeah. Exactly. Happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. But I think it's because I talk with such conviction about why the work is important, but I also don't want anyone to think, oh, it's going to be 6 months. It's going to be a weekend retreat. Like, it's not. It's not. I want them to be realistic as they dream and take action and all of that.
Yeah. And it's also cyclical too. It's like you can peel off a layer and you can then
Oh,
get,
yeah.
move a little bit, turtle steps. And I always talk about that when I'm
Yeah.
working with people too. It's all about little turtle steps or baby steps. And
Yeah.
and those accomplishments that you achieve during when you have a little turtle
Yeah.
step, those are the times you have to celebrate. And it may not seem like a big deal, but it is.
Oh,
It's
it's
a
huge.
Yeah, and you gotta celebrate all the little wins along the way, or otherwise you just feel like, "No, I want this big, big thing." And I think that's another thing that keeps people small is that
Absolutely.
they think like, "Oh my god, well, I wanna accomplish this big thing." Yeah, but you don't it's one step at a time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. My life incrementally got better through that decade. So it's
mhm.
not like one day I was miserable and the next day I was bright, shiny Jen, who I am
Wouldn't
today,
that be
right?
nice? That would be
It
nice,
was
wouldn't it?
incremental, you know, and it's by taking those tiny actions and celebrating. I love that you mentioned that because that is so key. And I don't know if your clients will say this to you, but we'll talk about, maybe a way they can remind themselves in the moment to bring more intentionality. And they're like, yeah, but that's so easy. I'm like, that's interesting because if it was so easy, you'd be doing it.
Right.
If it was that easy, they're like, oh, yeah, okay, you're right. And I'm like, yeah, like your brain is telling you the story that it should be easy. How's that working out for you? It's
Mhm.
not, right?
Yeah.
So don't diminish. This is my point. Don't diminish those turtle steps.
Yeah.
Those are the key to getting you those incremental wins
Mhm.
until one day you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even have to really think that hard about who I want to be. This is just who this is who I've become.
Yeah, and there's going to be so many iterations, and I'm sure,
Hmm.
like you said, over your 10-year journey, what who I am today is not who I'm gonna be in a month,
Yeah.
and that's great. I love that,
Yeah.
and it's like,
Yeah.
and I kinda look back over the arc of like, well, when did I really start this,
Mm,
changing journey and all of that? And, as I can't, like, pinpoint it, but I can see, okay, those were pivot points in my life.
mhm.
This thing happened, and then I was like, "Okay," and then that took me to the next level, and then that took me to the next level. And if you are okay looking back, everything that's happened to you or, anything good, bad, indifferent
Mhm.
has all shaped what you are and who you are. Like you said, whether it was trauma or whether it was,
Yeah.
a positive event,
Yeah.
it's still something that was part of your life, and everything that we do is a learning experience. I think everything is, every
Yeah.
little thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I always like not to reduce it to data.
Mhm.
Um, but it is kind of just data and
Yeah,
it's we assign a
it's
meaning to
information.
it, but it
Yeah,
doesn't have to be good, bad, right, or wrong. It can
yeah,
be just like, oh,
just
this
information.
thing, and then you get to decide what you do with it, right?
Yeah,
I can't undo my childhood,
right.
but I can decide what I'm going to do from it with it from here, right?
Yeah,
At
and I
any
like how you
moment I
oh,
can make a
sorry.
different choice
Yeah.
to, yeah, we're talking the same thing.
Yeah, no, and I like how you said, because I think about this in terms of horses too and how they deal with things,
Mm-hmm.
and I always kinda have to bring them into the
I
conversation
love
just because I
horses. I have
do.
a really cool story of a horse, but
But they, like you said, it's just data, it's information. We're
mhm,
taking in information but we do put it in, "Oh, that was a good thing, we'll put it in the good
yeah,
bucket.
yeah,
That was a bad thing, we'll put it in the bad bucket." And horses don't do that, they wanna know, "Safe? Not
yeah.
safe.
Say
Am I safe? Am I not safe? Is
ears,
this"
is there
Yeah,
ear like
yeah,
is there something going on? What do I need to
right.
watch out for? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that's why they're so important in my coaching practice.
Mm.
because they act as a feedback loop. And it's also, when someone is standing there face to face with a 1,200-pound animal, it's an eye opener for sure. Because
Yeah.
the horse is just like, it's a giant living, breathing mirror of what's really going on inside them.
Yeah.
And it kind of blows people away. But
Can
yeah.
I share my story about
Yeah, please.
Okay, so it was 2015. My friend Devin was leading her first retreat, doing equine, is it equine gestalt therapy? So,
There's
okay.
lots of different things out there. Yeah.
So a group of, let's say, 8 women, myself included, were at this retreat in Arizona. It was gorgeous. And we each got a turn with one of the 4 horses she was using. These horses had never done this type of work before.
Mhm.
And one after one, I saw each horse give that woman what she needed, right?
Mhm.
For me, this was right before I was going to blow up my entire world. So again, 2015, very big year for me.
Yeah, when you mentioned that date, I'm thinking, okay.
Yeah. This would have been in February. And so I went into the ring and I was sobbing at that point over like what I was working on. And the horse brought me into the biggest hug, like wrapped his neck around me, brought me in to this hug. And he just like, I was so sobbing, I couldn't even breathe. And he just put his muzzle here and just breathed with me.
Crazy.
Okay. The
Yeah.
next year, same time, I went back. This time I was working on something very different, having to do with my business. I had the same horse and he was all about getting me to action. Like we are walking, we are taking, it was just like, what is even happening? He gave me the most tender hug I'd had in my life. And a year later, he's like, nope, take an action. Come on, let's go, let's go. It was amazing. Mind
Yeah.
blown.
They are incredible animals. They
Mhm.
don't need, people are like, well, how do you train them to do that? I'm like, you don't. They're just
Yeah,
horses. They're being themselves. That's
yeah,
what's happening.
yeah.
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 That's
This
really
one
cool. I'm
woman,
glad you
her
had that.
like the whole weekend, her jaw was just so tight, and you could tell her jaw was so tight. She gets in the ring with the horse, and the horse starts like yawning,
Mhm.
to release the tension.
Yeah.
And then he took the biggest shit I've ever seen a horse take. But it was the release of all that
Yeah.
stuff, right? That negative emotion.
Yeah.
It
Because
was
they
wild.
do. You know, their heart space connects with your heart space,
Mhm.
and they're, getting in sync with you if you let them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They can see right through whatever facade you're putting up. But yeah, I'm really glad you had that experience and got to
Mhm.
witness other people's experiences as well,
Yeah.
because
So
you can
powerful.
take the same horse and they can deal with multiple
Mhm.
people. You don't want to tax them, obviously, but let's say 2 different people, and they will
Yep.
act
Yep.
and completely differently with each person, giving them, like you said,
Mhm.
what they need the most, which is it's a beautiful experience.
Yeah. Yeah. We got to work with a draft horse and I don't know what kind of my horse was. It was kind of like dappled and speckled and but it was the neatest experience.
Yeah.
I came back home and I started taking riding lessons. And then I had like a slow roll fall off a horse. And all we would do is like go in a circle and I wanted to trail ride and so I stopped doing it. But I do. Maybe someday.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun. Cool. I love that. And I have a couple of retreats coming up.
Oh, do
Shameless
you?
plug here.
Yeah, please. Yeah. I'm so curious about how you work with horses in your coaching practice.
Yeah. Well, this isn't about me, but I'm happy to chime in here.
Yeah, please.
So it's the same thing. Everything's on the ground. Um, the person just is in the space with the horse. Um, and I'm watching the horse, and I'm
Mhm.
watching the horse's behavior, and I'm watching how the person interacts with the horse, how the horse interacts with the person, and it just gives an opportunity for me to ask really open-ended
Mm,
coaching questions, and help guide them, because the horse will bring out what
mm,
the person, they may
mhm,
set an intention before they go in the arena, and
mhm.
then once they get in there, it's like it's usually not that intention that's really something
Yeah,
that they're gonna
yeah.
end up working on, which is pretty cool.
I'm
Um,
so
but yeah, I
fascinated
have
by this.
3-day retreat coming up at the end of May, in Paso Robles, California, and
I
that's
love Paso Robles red wine.
come join us.
Don't tempt me.
Come I'm not tempting you. Come on, let's go. Yeah, so I'm gonna co-facilitate this, with one of my,
Amazing.
fellow Equus coaches, Frida Karsberg, and we we have
Equus,
fun
that's the
together.
word for it. Equus.
What's that?
Equus, that's the word
Equus,
for it.
yes.
So 2015, we don't have to, I mean, if you want to go into it, I will, but I almost blew
Yeah, I
up
was
my
gonna
world.
ask you if I didn't know if you mind talking about what happened with
Yeah,
your pivot point, because it sounds like it was a really major
it
turning
was,
point for
yeah.
you. Yeah.
There were two things that happened back to back. Up until then, it was decades of, like I said, that anger, that bitterness, like all of it. And the one thing I hadn't done was leave my husband,
Mm,
right? And he had kind of become the effigy. I didn't realize I was doing it, but I had made him, he was there to fix my world. That's not his job, right? But I
right.
made that his job. And when he didn't, he became the effigy. And so I was like, well, I'm going to leave him, right? But I would tell people, and the retreat, so I went to the retreat in February. I came home from it. And that when I got home, that's when I told him I wanted a divorce, right?
Mhm.
We decided to wait until my daughter, she was the only one left at home. She was 10. We decided to wait till she was done with school for the year to tell her. But I had an apartment that I was moving into the very next day that we told her, right? Like I had been furnishing this apartment, all of that. So this was serious. That night I went to bed, and the only way I can describe it is my heart finally started talking louder than my very unhealthy ego. And it was like, you actually don't want this. This is not going to do, it's not going to fix anything. It's going to make it worse. He's only ever supported and loved you. He's the only person who's ever had your back. You're throwing that away, blah, blah, blah. So he wakes up the next morning. I didn't sleep, of course. He wakes up and we talk, and we gave it about a week to just kind of keep talking and make sure, because what we didn't want to do was tell our daughter, oh, we're just kidding. We
Right,
wanted to make sure that that would be really awful.
right.
Um, so we've been together ever since. But right behind that, my mom sent me a letter, my brother and I, that swept all the years of abuse under the rug and said, we're so sorry that we spoiled you. It was to make up for our tense relationship. And I was like, oh, hold on here. What in the actual fuck? Like, it was so crazy that I was like, okay, what am I carrying from my childhood that I'm not going to carry anymore? So it was those two things. Why I share this though is that same woman that I went to the retreat with, I had put my daughter through the ringer. She was 10. Our little family was her whole entire world. And I gave her the trauma of thinking that was falling apart. So she and I went out to Colorado to my friend's place, and we did some equus work with my friend as a mom daughter, leading each other through, like, I think I was blindfolded and she led the horse. And so I had to trust her. And there were things where she had to trust me. And it was just a beautiful experience.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I love that I didn't know that about you before we got on the show here, but I love that you've had that experience with horses and can speak to it from a
Yeah.
client's perspective rather than, I
I
mean, but the
wish
same
everyone
thing with
could
me.
experience it. That is
Yeah,
probably one of the most healing things I've ever done for
yeah.
myself.
Yeah, it's amazing. Good for you. I love that. And
Yeah.
so you didn't end up leaving your husband.
Nope. We celebrated
You
23
unfucked up
years.
your daughter for the
Yeah.
most.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Yeah. It all worked out. I think that I had to hit that rock bottom for me to, I had to have my dark night of the soul.
Hey,
But
we gotta
that's
embrace our
sometimes
dark
what it
side.
takes.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
sometimes what it takes. That's often what it takes. What I was going to say too, Sue, is that what bothers me about society is that our stories, you with your alcoholic mother, me with my abusive dad and checked out mom, like, these are sadly not unusual stories.
Mm-mm.
These are not uncommon,
No.
right? And that's really tragic. And thankfully we're talking about these things so others know that there's hope and possibility and all of that. But think of how many people are still carrying that stuff inside of them that they may not even realize how much it's impacting them,
Right.
right? To
Yeah,
then start to
absolutely.
work on it. And it's just tragic to me that because I'll tell, I've had a few therapists for the years, and they'll just be like, oh wow, that's really messed up. And I'm like, hey, I don't need you to tell me that. I know it's really messed up.
Can I have
Um,
my money back? I
But
knew
B,
that.
the more I talk with people, the more I find out this wasn't that unusual. I'm a special snowflake, but my story is not.
Right.
We're all special snowflakes, by the way. But
Yeah.
yeah.
And, and the thing is, yes, the things that we have gone through may have been because of our parents, but that doesn't mean that they were bad people. They were doing the
Right.
best that they could.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another, I think, big realization that people, it's like you can't blame somebody else for your
Mm-hmm.
shit because
Yeah.
now guess what? You may have had a rocky start or you may have encountered some things, but you're responsible for yourself. You can't
Yeah.
be responsible for them. They were doing the best they could,
Yeah.
right? Whatever it was. And at some point you do have to take responsibility for yourself
Yeah.
and move on. And I know that like sure that's easier said than done, but like you said,
Absolutely.
it's not gonna happen overnight. It's not there's no
Yeah.
magic pill. There's none of that. But it was funny when you were talking about how much more common,
Mm.
you know, somebody gave me a t-shirt a long time ago. And it was like a cartoon on the t-shirt, and it was this auditorium, and there was two people in it. It was basically an empty auditorium with two people in there, and the
Mm-hmm.
caption read, "Meeting for adult children of normal parents," or something like that. I'm like, oh my god. I like, yeah, well, that's
Yeah.
about the right ratio there. Two people from normal families. Yeah,
Oh
it was
my
just cute.
gosh, that
Yeah, it
yeah,
was pretty
but
funny.
and that goes to the readiness that I was mentioning. It's if you're not at a place where you are taking that personal responsibility for what happens next,
Mhm.
you're not ready. Like there's other work you need to do before you come to me and do that deeper identity, right? Because it does require of you that personal responsibility. Yeah.
And especially if, if you do have deep trauma or,
Mm.
no, you're definitely not ready just for
Yeah.
coaching, right? You need to do
Yeah.
that work with someone who is qualified and certified and
Absolutely.
can help you through that because once you peel back that layer, that's a lot. You can't,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
like opening Pandora's box.
Yep.
And I mean, you don't want you personally, and neither do I, want to be working with someone who is in deep trauma and
Mhm.
and peeling back those layers. So, it's like it's
Yeah,
good to have a
yeah,
referral network, but
absolutely. Yeah, I have my list of referrals. I absolutely, but it was, as a coach, it was realizing that, even though my story is born from trauma and I tend to attract people then that have similar stories,
Mhm.
I know my limitations and boundaries. And so very early on, and I remember going through my website, one of the first couple iterations of my website copy. And I was like, "Ooh, I'm talking to people about trauma." And I'm like, "No, no, 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 Jen."
Yeah.
Because I
I'm
had
not a
brought in a
trauma
couple of
therapist.
clients that were not ready and, I had to refer out and stuff. But I'm like, "Okay, I have a responsibility here to represent, the work and the readiness." And I think that's why I double down on that readiness so much
Yeah, I love
is
that.
I got to make sure, A, I don't want you to waste your time and money,
Mhm.
right? Um, but B, I feel like I have this due diligence to really vet someone, and it's not that I'm deciding for them, but it's you get a sense for like where they're at, and if I go back to the safety in your nervous system, like do you feel safe,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Internally to start excavating some of that stuff.
Yeah. Excavating's a good word. I love that.
Yeah,
Oh, goodness. Well, as we're wrapping up here,
yeah,
if someone wanted to work with you or were curious about your work and wanted to
yeah.
get in touch with you, what's the best way that someone can connect with you?
Yeah, bedarecreate.com.
Okay.
And I love my Facebook is public. The more friends, the merrier. I love connecting with people. I'm always down for like a virtual coffee or what have you. So come find me.
Nice. And
Yeah,
are you on Instagram as well?
I am. I'm not as active there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, we'll put all your contact information in the show notes. So I just want to, what is one thing that you would like to leave my listeners with?
Mm. One thing. It is never too late unless you say it is or you're dead. then it's too late. But it breaks my heart when I hear women especially say, oh, I'm too old, it's too late. It's like, no. Do you realize the super cool shit that women in their 80s and 90s up to 104 are doing? Do not tell me that. Do not do that to yourself.
Yeah.
So if you
Perfect.
find it's an easy thought, right?
Yeah.
Because we're kind of taught like we're supposed to have these thoughts. But if you find yourself having that thought, you got to nip that shit in the bud and be like, no, if I want to do this, like I'm taking an aerial class tonight for the first time ever. And I'm like, I may
Is that
suck
like
at it.
trapeze kind of flying through the air stuff?
Yeah,
Aerial
like the
stuff?
circles and the
Oh,
silks and
okay. Gotcha.
I'm like, I'm gonna look stupid doing it. But I'm not too old. Like, you want to tell me at 55 I'm too old to learn that? No, no. I may not do it well, but I'm gonna do it.
I love it. I love it. And that's pretty funny because I do have an upcoming guest who is 87, I believe, and she is a hot air balloonist down in Australia, and I cannot
Amazing.
wait. She is a pistol. I cannot wait to have her on the show. So,
Yeah,
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 you're never too old. You're never
yeah.
too anything.
To
Um,
anything. Yeah,
yeah,
unless you say you are,
yeah,
because it goes back to that personal responsibility,
yeah,
right?
and keeping yourself small.
Exactly.
Jen, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate you. This has been a fun conversation, and thank you for the horse stories. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, yeah. I love that you do that. I'm so impressed.
Well, you'll have to join me for one of my retreats.
Yes,
I'll send you
absolutely.
some information. And for the rest of you out there, if this has resonated with you, please get in touch with Jen, get in touch with me, whatever. But
Mhm.
share this with a friend. We all know somebody that might be struggling, especially now. We're all dealing with a lot of stuff. So if you found this inspirational and resonated with you, please share it with a friend, like and subscribe to the podcast. We love you. We're here for you. And I will see you next week. And in the meantime, don't forget, it's never too late to awaken a life worth being. Thank you for listening to today's episode of A Life Worth Being. I hope you found it fun and inspiring. And to avoid a bad case of FOMO, please be sure to click that subscribe button. If you love what you heard today, please share it with a friend and then hop on over to your favorite podcast platform and return the love with a wonderful review and 5-star rating. It would truly mean the world to me. Be sure to follow me on Instagram and on my website, links below in the show notes. I appreciate you, and I will see you next week for more fresh insights on awakening a life worth being.